Is Nii. I'm head of standards development at CISA. CISA's been around for a little while now, and I've been with CISA since May last year. So I'm going to take you through the process of what we've been doing at CISA since our creation, and then also talk to you about the standards that we've recently launched. So before I tell you what the CISA standards are, let me tell you about CISA. It is the Creative Industries Independent Standards Authority. We came about through a lot of different things that were happening in industry around bullying and harassment, going all the way back to the Harvey Weinstein issues, but also we work across film, TV, music, and theatre. And there's been a lot of issues within music and a big sort of report from a government select committee about misogyny in music. So those are the areas that we cover, and it's very much about tackling all forms of bullying and harassment, and any kind of nature of a discriminatory nature, essentially. So the CISA standards are about providing this single framework, this unified vision of what good looks like in our industries. So you can see how it ties in very nicely with the work of the film and TV charity. What we're doing is setting those umbrella standards about what good behaviour should look like. So there are several phases to CISA, and we're currently in phase one, looking at those industry standards, those professional standards. My colleagues are doing a lot of fundraising. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk specifically about the standards and how they can be used within the industry. There are other services that CISA is looking to develop. Once we've embedded these standards and we start taking reports, we'll be able to use that to provide data and insights to start signposting people to support. And the next stage that we're looking at with the standards is also developing guidance and training, as well as signposting to existing good work that's out there. And then the final phase of CISA will be looking at providing support and intervention in the terms of mediation, arbitration, recommendations, and those will be really for the most complex cases. But the standards themselves, they're the whole industry, and the industry can use them now, regardless of any other operational activity that CISA sets up. So I wanted to just talk about the fact that CISA, we didn't just make up our standards, we worked very closely with industry. I had probably nearly 100 conversations with different organisations across film, TV, music and theatre. And I also had a fantastic advisory committee, and you can see the likes of BBC, ITV, Warner Brothers Discovery on there. And they worked with me over several months to forensically look at the standards and to help create those draft standards. I also held a number of workshops with organisations who represent freelancers. So you might recognise, and also you might have noticed, Film and TV Charity, they're on our advisory committee, and they also took part in these workshops, as did the Production Guild, Women in Film and Television, Can't Buy My Silence, which is Zelda Perkins' organisation that is about the misuse of non-disclosure agreements that have been used to silence people, Raising Films, which is for parents in film and TV, for example. So all of these organisations said to us, they wanted us to make sure that the standards were relatable to their freelancers and the people they work with. Just to say, the standards are not just for freelancers, they are for any kind of worker, including full-time employees, part-time employees. But we know that there's specific issues in the creative industries around self-employed and freelance workers. So we wanted to make sure the standards were relatable to them, that they could be scaled to any size of organisation, production or project. So all the way through the standards, we talk about those three different types of entities: organizations, then specific productions, and then particular projects, which, for example, in music might be sort of a festival or something like that. That the standards are very much about taking action, and that we do look at unlawful behavior, but it's not just about unlawful activity. It's about being professional. We're looking at professional standards of behavior, and we do, of course, acknowledge where there are different legislations in different nations of the UK. So jumping ahead to talk about the consultation that we had. So we drafted those standards, we talked to all those people. We had an 8-week consultation between start of December and end of January. We had some fantastic contributions, including from TAC. So there was an online survey, so people could respond to that. We hosted some webinars. We talked to other organisations, etc. And based on that consultation, after that, we had a month, so quite a quick turnaround to publish those standards. But the headline data that was coming out of the consultation, we had over 700 people engaged with over almost 200 really meaningful responses. The headlines that we got were a third of those respondents were self-employed or contract workers. A quarter of them came from organisations such as TAC and others. And we had about a third working in film and television from the respondents, and a brilliant range of roles as well, from composers to lighting designers to puppet makers to makeup artists, the whole range, the whole works. And we had some really good news in terms of 80% of respondents felt that the standards were already clear, either clear or somewhat clear to them, and that they could see how the standards were relevant to them and their experience of working in the industries. There was a lower percentage around people who felt they were sufficiently clear for them to use in practice, but the next steps for the standards themselves, the standards tell us what the expectations are in terms of behaviour. Our next step is to say, is to present guidance on how they can implement them. So let me just give you a very quick review of the document. It is available on our website, which is you can see, I think, at the bottom of this page here, CIISA.org.uk. And you can go there, you can see the standards. You can also see this button here, which says, have you come here to find help? So there you'll see that we list a lot of organisations, including the Film and TV Charity and others, who are giving wonderful support to people, and we'll continue to signpost them when CIISA is operational. CIISA isn't currently operational, so that's why we want to make sure people are aware that there is fantastic support out there. And even when CIISA is operational, we will be signposting to this existing support, as well as addressing any gaps ourselves. So 2 documents have been published since the consultation ended. We launched the standards, which is one on the left. We launched them last Thursday, so a week ago. And alongside that, we did a document called You Said, We Did, which summarises the changes that we did make to the standards based on the consultation. People were really positive about them, and there were some comments, and we've made those changes, and you can see them in the document. And as you can see, it's been a very tight time frame, but we are in the process of having the standards translated into Welsh, so that we have that Welsh version as soon as possible on our website. Won't go through in detail about the contents, but you'll see that within there, we introduce you to the standards. We have this page about how we want people to feel when the standards are used in practice, which I'll talk about briefly. I'll also take you through the at-a-glance version of the standards, and you can see the full version in the document. And also just to flag that we do have some appendices where we describe the harmful behaviour that's covered in the standards, which is essentially around bullying, harassment, victimisation. Victimisation being when people are, there's some form of retaliation because that they've complained about the harmful behaviour that they or other people have experienced. We do have a list of the legislation that are relevant to the standards. And again, we highlight our committee members who helped us to develop them. I'm not expecting you to read this, but I just wanted to say that for us, this page here, how the workforce should feel when the standards are used in practice, was really helpful for the advisory committee when we were developing the standards. We wanted to make sure that people knew what the standards were, knew what they covered, what was expected of them. They recognise what a breach of the standards by the entity that they're working with looked like, that if they were considering raising concern, they felt safe to do so, and they felt that the process was easily accessible, that they felt informed while a concern was being looked at. They felt that any outcome was achieved in a fair way, and if they reflected on their experience, they would feel confident to raise a concern in the future and would recommend others to do the same. And also, if they were the subject of a concern, so if a concern was raised about them, they would feel that they'd been treated in a fair and appropriate way as well. So here's the standards at a glance. There are 4 of them. The first one is safe working environments, and that is about ensuring that people feel it's not only about physical safety, but it's also about psychological safety and safety from sexual harm. So that's the first one, and you can see how that ties very much in with the film and TV charities activity. Inclusive working environments is about ensuring that the environment is free from discrimination, that there's a culture of inclusivity and accessibility. And then the third one is about open and accountable reporting mechanisms. So you can see that our standards aren't just about the behaviours that are expected, not to bully or harass people, but also the standards cover the way that any concerns are addressed, so that ensuring that people are able to feel confident about raising a concern, that it's a transparent process, and that they feel that they get a good outcome at the end of it. And then the final one is responsive learning culture. And, I think we've all seen where people say, oh, lessons have been learned, but then suddenly we see another issue coming up. Well, we've made it part of the standards that people need to really be proactively ensuring that they are learning from the concerns that are raised, and also learning from the experience of those who were affected by that concern and the impact that it has. So it becomes this sort of, circle where everything is constantly being improved, and that people are sharing knowledge and experience and best practice. And because we're pan-creative industries, we as CIISA want to play a real part in making sure that learning is shared. The work that film and TV charity is doing is certainly something that people in theatre and music could also find interesting, and vice versa. So we do go into detail about each of the standards, and you'll see that we talk about what individuals within the creative workforce should be doing, what senior leaders should be doing, and what managers should be doing. So just to state that when we talk about the creative industries workforce, we're talking about anyone, regardless of their role, status, working type. So they could be employee, self-employed, another type of worker. They might not be in a creative role. They might be, security, they might be hosting, they might be admin, but they're all part of the creative industries workforce. It obviously includes talent as well. So we make it very clear within the document that that's who we mean by creative industries workforce. We also talk about senior leaders, who are people who are responsible for the strategic leadership of that organisation, production or project. And then we also talk about managers, which I know we've talked about here, and about making sure that managers understand what their responsibility is. They may not realise that they are actually a manager, that might not be in their job title, but it's making sure that those individuals who are responsible for engaging and supervising the work of others understand what their responsibilities are. So here you can see the example for standard 1, which is safe working environments. And then we have, statements for each of those 3 groups. And then we also have underneath that, within the main document, a lot more bullets that describe in detail what we mean. There's also some introductory text as well to really explain, as I said, about what we mean by a safe working environment. Also, I should note, when we talk about working environments, we use that rather than workplace, because we know that the working environment in our industries is broad. So it's not just about a set. It could be online auditions. It could be rehearsal rooms. It could be a tour bus or overseas work. It could be a work-related social event. It could be an industry award ceremony or trade event. So there's such a variety of working environments, and the standards cover all of them. As I said, I won't take you through these now in detail, but you'll see that for standard 1, safe working environments, we have also similar information expectations for inclusive working environments. We do the same for open and accountable reporting mechanisms. And, for senior leaders in all of these cases, it's very much about being preventative, and really looking ahead and making sure that they've put the right mechanisms in place, as well as the right communication means. And then the final one is the responsive learning culture. As I said, I won't go through them now in detail because we don't have the time, but please do review the document, which will be coming in Welsh very soon, to have a look at what those expectations are. The next steps for us, as I've mentioned here, we've got an easy read version for people with learning difficulties is coming. The Welsh version is also coming. We will then also be going out and talking more, as we are now, to people across film, television, music, and theatre to engage them so that they understand what the state standards are, that they're now live, that they're living. We've had brilliant feedback, even from the BBC just the other day, talking about, including them in their contracts. And we've had other organisations talking about similar types of engagement with the standards. And then the next step for us is to collate that existing good practice and also develop tailored practical guidance as to how people can use those standards in practice. But I hope you can see that they kind of sit as an umbrella, and then you've got activities such as the toolkit that Film and TV Charity has, that if you are using that, you're already starting to meet some of the standards within CIISA's activity. You've got the website again here for you, so please do have a look at that. I will alert our colleagues here when the Welsh version is available. And then also just finally, just go on to any questions. And of course, if you do want to email us, we do have an email address here, info@ciisa.org.uk. And I'll stop